shoot or don't shoot. Hey, you the listener, you're going to enter into our digital shooting simulator today. And you're going to determine for yourself in real life shootings, would you shoot or don't shoot? We're going to have a weird, crazy crook story, and we're going to discover something that just might keep you off an airplane, even if you are not on the no-fly list. That and much more, we're going to have it right here today on today's Charlie Crimebuster Show. Well, hello and welcome to today's show. So honored to have you as a listener. Glad that you've joined our crime-fighting friends. Our show now goes from coast to coast. We have listeners from Washington to Florida and, all over the United States. And we're delighted to have you as a part of our family. Thank you for subscribing and for following us on social media platforms. You see, that helps us get the message out on how to keep people safe. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart. Now, today's show, you're going to be faced with real-life shoot or don't shoot situations. Kind of a special feature today. And I say real life because they happen in real-life situations. They were not made up in Hollywood. Nope, nope, nope. These are real people who were shot and left behind loved ones and families. Now, some of the shooters were cops and some were concerned citizens. Some of them went to jail, cops and all, and some of them were cleared from an unlawful shooting. Now, I'm going to attempt to give you the background, so you need to make a choice. Now, I'm not going to answer it for you. You see, if you're in such a situation, I'm not going to be there to make the choices. And in some situations, some people might shoot where I would not. Even though I may have had the justification to do so, just because you could shoot, well, doesn't really mean that you need to shoot, does it? Now, our whole purpose today is to make a statement. That statement is that carrying a weapon or having access to a weapon is a tremendous responsibility. And along with our digital shooting simulator, there are going to be some more news that you can use and some important information, again, that might just keep you off an airplane. And it's not the no-fly list. Well, to get started on our shoot and don't shoot a simulator, digital simulator. Now, it can't be everything that you see in our real life, but we're going to try to set it up the best we can. Our first story comes from Texas. Somebody has rightly said, don't mess with Texas, and boy, this story proves it to be true. It seems that there were a trio of males from the Dallas area. They were headed to East Texas over the weekend, and they intended to steal cars. This comes from KETK TV reported it. And they were citing the Smith County Sheriff's Office. According to the Smith County Sheriff, Larry Smith. Whoops, wait a minute, did you hear that? That's right, it's true. Smith County Sheriff, his name is Larry Smith. Well, Mr. Smith in Smith County, he said the group was looking to prey on honest, hard-working individuals. But instead, these guys got a good Northeast Texas welcome. That's what the station said. Kevon Miller, 17 years of age, along with two unidentified men. They pulled up to a Flint home midnight when the homeowner noticed the headlights. The homeowner saw the group scoping out his car, and he scared them off. By firing 3 warning shots into the air. Now, the group fled, but then they returned after noticing the streets dead end. By this time, it seems another neighbor had accompanied the neighbor that fired the shots. And he, too, he was armed with a shotgun. That's what Smith told the station. And about that time, the vehicle, without its lights on, accelerated and started speeding toward them from the dead-end road. And both of them... Well, what would you do? Would you shoot or not shoot? These people are messing around your car. You fire warning shots, and they take off. They couldn't get out the dead end, so now they're turned around and they're headed right straight toward you. Would you shoot or not shoot? What would you do? Well, here's what happened there. Bullets from both guns hit McMiller, who was driving the vehicle, which also happened to be stolen. That vehicle was stolen. That's what KETK said. Now, the 17-year-old, he was nabbed, but the other 2 males, they fled and they haven't been found. McMiller was taken to the jail on a charge of unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and he likely will face more charges. The sheriff's office really wouldn't say where McMiller was shot and what his condition was following the incident. But what did you do? Did you shoot or did you not shoot? Now here's what a lawyer says about it. This is what Randy Roberts of Roberts & Roberts law firm there in Tyler, Texas told the station. He said, if someone's driving a car toward you, you don't have to figure out whether or not they're trying to kill you. If you have reasonable belief that they're trying to do serious bodily harm to you, then you have a right to stand your ground and to shoot them. You see, Texas stand your ground law, it allows individuals to protect themselves with deadly force as long as they're somewhere they're supposed to be, such as your home, car, place of employment, and you believe that your life is being threatened. That's according to KETK. But now it appears if you had shot, you would not be charged, at least there in Texas. And that's criminally. Now, I said criminally. The families in the car could still have the right to sue you. And remember, if you lawfully shoot someone does not mean you should shoot someone. You decide, because what you decide, you must abide. Now, even though that shooting may have been determined to be a clear one there in Texas, let me ask you a question. What if it had happened in a different state? What if it had happened with a different group of people? I don't know, let's say maybe San Diego, and let's say in the area of a fairground. And wait a minute before you answer whether you do the same thing or not. Because lawyers there, they happen to be representing a gun show promoter called Crossroads of the West. And they are going to launch a legal challenge to a brand new state law that bans the sale of guns and ammo at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. It appears San Diego Assemblyman Todd Gloria, he authored the bill. Governor signed it into law. He said the communities around Del Mar Fairgrounds, they've been very clear. This is not what they want in their community, and the state should be complicit with the injection of additional guns to our neighborhood. That's what Gloria said last week before the bill was signed into law. Now, there's a legal expert, Dan Eaton. He says that Gloria's bill, which is scheduled to take effect in 2021, he said, well, that's going to be headed straight to the courts. He says this is an effort by the state to address gun violence by any means necessary. He also goes on to say this state may have chosen an unconstitutional means, and that's why we have courts. It appears that the fairgrounds have tried this earlier. They tried to temporarily ban guns last year, but Crossroads of the West, they sued. And a federal judge issued a preliminary injunction saying the shows must go on. The new law says guns and ammo sales are not allowed in Del Mar, and that's starting in 2021, effectively banning gun shows there. They go on to say that this is a test case because the state of California, they knew that this was going to be subject to litigation, and that you can expect that if this legislation survives a federal lawsuit, then you'll probably see this legislation extended to other fairgrounds as well. On the other hand, Crossroads of the West and others, they argued that the ban violates the First Amendment. Lawyers representing the promoters said Monday that the suit will be expanded to challenge the new law. And as far as gun promoters are concerned, this is a matter of free speech and free assembly. That's what Eaton says. They're saying that we're coming together to celebrate gun culture. Well, Eaton goes on to say the state does not see this as a constitutional issue. They say it has nothing to do with suppressing free speech and everything to do with suppressing sales. Sales that the state believes ultimately lead to gun violence. Eaton said this issue may go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, but while the battle legal unfolds, well, the gun shows, they're going to continue. In fact, there is a show scheduled for December in Del Mar. Spokeswoman for the Del Mar Fairgrounds Board said because of the pending litigation, it is not commenting, but it did say it would adhere to the new law when it takes effect in 2021. So you're going to a gun show at Del Mar, you better go this December. It may be the last one. Who knows what the courts are going to do? It is, after all, California. And while they're battling it out there at Del Mar Fairground, there are people who are opponents of stronger gun control. At the same time, some of these same people are focusing on the police, and they're pushing for police reform. That's especially in line of the two recent police shootings where innocent people have been shot. This comes from CNN. It says, less than 2 weeks ago, S. Lee Merritt, he held the murder conviction of a former Dallas police officer who fatally shot her neighbor. He says it's a huge victory for black people in America. And today, the civil rights attorney, he's now representing the family of Miss Jefferson. Miss Jefferson, as you recall, was the black Texan lady that was gunned down at her home by a white police officer. They tell us now that 107 state and local law enforcement officers have been arrested on murder or manslaughter for fatal on-duty shootings. That's since 2005, that is. But of this 107, only 38 have been convicted of a crime. That's according to Stinson. The 38 cases, they do not include this month's murder conviction of former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger. If you heard the podcast last week, you know all about Amber. She claimed that she mistook a black neighbor's Botham Jeans apartment for her own when she shot and killed him, believing that he was an intruder. Now, Geiger was off duty at her apartment complex about 30 miles east of Jefferson's home in Fort Worth. And Geiger who served law enforcement, served to protect, served for 5 years. She's now going to be serving a prison sentence of 10 years in prison because of that shooting. What this means is simply this, my friend. If you are a concealed carry citizen, if you do carry a weapon, and that if you are involved in any shooting whatsoever, you mark it down, you are going to be investigated thoroughly. So you should think carefully whether you should shoot or you should not shoot. Speaking of that, there's a family of an armed robber who was shot and killed this last week while robbing an Ohio Dollar General. And they are saying it was just wrong. It was just wrong for the store clerk to defend himself by pulling a firearm and shooting the robber. That's right, shooting the robber. See, it was Roosevelt Rapley, 23 years of age. He entered a Dollar General store in Dayton, Ohio, last Wednesday around 6:20 p.m. He pulled a firearm, pointed it at several individuals in the store, and he demanded money from the clerk. This comes to us from WHIO-TV. They said there was a separate worker who was armed, and that this worker drew a firearm and shot Rapley in the chest. Rapley then left the store, collapsed outside, and died. Now, according to Rapley's family, who spoke of WHIO, they say it was wrong that the employee shot their brother in self-defense. Now, they went on to say he's got some responsibility, but not all, Rapley's sister said. Right and wrong is wrong, and that was wrong for the clerk to shoot my brother in the chest. Yes, he's robbing him. Oh, well, call the police. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to take matters into your own hands. That's what she said. Now, let me ask you, what would you do? You're in a General Dollar store. It's being held up. A man has a gun. He's pointed it at you. You are a concealed carry citizen. You have a right to have a weapon. And he pointed the gun at you, and he pointed the gun at others. Would you shoot or would you not shoot? Now, the 911 call indicated that the employee fired his weapon in self-defense. Here's what he said to the 911 operators. I just had somebody try to attempt to rob me over here at the Dollar General on Gettysburg. Came in with a firearm, threatened to take money out of the drawer, pointed a gun at me and my staff members. That's what the caller told dispatchers. He pointed a gun at me. I had a firearm on me. I pulled my firearm, and I shot him in self-defense. Well, what did you do? What would you do if you were thinking about that in our shoot or don't shoot digital assimilator? Did you shoot or did you not shoot? And what happened there? Well, authorities there, they're going to give all the evidence to a prosecutor for review. But however, they are saying, the authorities there, they're saying charges are not expected to be filed against the employee who shot Rapley. Well, you know what I say? Here's what I say. Maybe people should stop robbing people at gunpoint, right? Yep. Maybe they should just stop robbing people at gunpoint. Now, speaking of crazy things, here's another crazy thing. It's now time for our Crazy Crook story, and this is a humdinger. And oh no, oh no, oh no, it's another Florida man. I was so glad last week when I was able to tell you about the guy from out of the country. You remember him? He was the guy who was trying to steal something out of the man's car, and he thought it was a pocketbook or a tote, and it ended up having a poisonous snake in it. If you didn't hear that, you need to hear last week's podcast. Well, this guy, he's not from out of the country, but he's from right down in Florida, not too far from where this podcast is being recorded. He's down in Pasco County, Florida, down on the beautiful, beautiful coast there. He goes on to say this. This is the story from Pasco County, Florida. There are many reasons for calling 911, but my friend, may I say, your weed getting stolen just might not be one of them. There's a Pasco County Sheriff's deputy. He was participating in the agency's tweet-alone. You know, that was kind of a thing where he was given a bit of the behind-the-scenes look into the life of a deputy on the road. He was doing that Saturday night when he was told and asked to respond to a particular call. The guy calling in, he was saying that his roommate stole his weed. Yep, stole his weed, $20 worth. That's what the deputy said. And he's upset, so he keeps calling 911. So I've got to give him a call and tell him to stop calling about his weed. Now, medical marijuana, for the background, medical marijuana is legal in Florida under certain conditions, but recreational use of marijuana is not. So the deputy gave the guy a bit of advice. He said, I called him to let him know not to call the sheriff's office to report his drugs. He started to freak out a little on the phone, and then he hung up on me. Well, there's our Crazy Crook, folks, all the way from Pasco County. You know, there's a moral to this. If you have drugs, you probably ought not call the police and tell them about it, because they just might come and lock you up for using illegal drugs. All right, time to get back to our digital shooting simulator. Now, here's one that you might remember. Someone is parking in a handicapped parking space, and this is one of your pet peeves. A man, along with his small boy, walks into a store, and you walk up to the driver of the vehicle that parked in the handicapped place. Doesn't have a decal. This is a female, and you begin to ask her why she's parking in a handicapped parking space. The man sees you aggressively arguing with his girlfriend, and he comes up to you and he yells at you and he pushes you to the ground. Now, he's much bigger than you, and you feel he will be able to cause great bodily harm to you. You are also a concealed carry citizen. You have a permit and you're carrying a weapon. Do you shoot or do you not shoot? Now, this is a stand your ground key, and remember and the key to this is that you, as a reasonable person, you feel that great bodily harm or even death can come to you. Do you shoot or do you not shoot? Now, most of you who follow our podcasts, you already know this Clearwater incident in Clearwater, Florida. You already know about this because you've been listening to the podcast. And this Florida man, just this past week, as we reported last week, this past week, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for killing an unarmed black man who shoved him in a parking lot dispute. Now, the slain man's family, he embraced the sentence, they did, and said that they felt that they were getting some measure of justice. This gentleman, DeCray, he was actually convicted of manslaughter in August after shooting and killing Marcus McGlotton of outside a convenience store in Clearwater, Florida. At the trial, his lawyers had tried to unsuccessfully use the elements of Florida's Stand Your Ground law as a defense for justifiable homicide. Now, the Stand Your Ground law does say that a person has no duty to retreat, and has the right to use deadly force if he reasonably believes that doing so will prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. Now, we all know that. Most of us do. But did you know this? The same law, the same Stand Your Ground law that says a person has no duty to retreat, has a right to use deadly force, it also states that it does not apply, Stand Your Ground does not, N-O-T, does not apply to a person who initially provokes the use of force against himself, unless he's exhausted every reasonable means to escape such danger. You see, a lot of people don't realize that part of the Stand Your Law ground. And, they say, well, the stand your ground law just gives people a license to shoot people. That's not true at all. It's very clear on what is justifiable and what is not. So a month after McLaughlin's death, the state attorney charged this man with manslaughter. And now he is going to prison for 20 years. 20 years. How about you? Did you shoot or did you not shoot? If you shot in that situation with it as it was, you too might find yourself going to prison. Hey, let me ask you to do something. Take a quick look at your driver's license. Now, wait a minute. If you're driving, don't do that. No. If you're driving, keep your eyes on the road. Stay alert. But if not, take a quick look at your driver's license. I want to ask you a question. Does it have a star in the upper right corner? Because, my friend, only those with starred license will be able to fly within the United States in the coming year. You see, these new driver's licenses with stars, well, they're Real ID compliant. That's what you call Real ID compliant, meaning that they're much more secure than what was previously issued. And these new rules, well, they were announced back in 2005 when Congress passed the Real ID Act on the recommendation of the 9/11 Commission. And that recommendation was to turn around and make our driver's license more secure. The TSA administrator said the security requirements of the Real ID Act will dramatically enhance and improve commercial aviation security. Well, what does this mean for travelers? It means this. Beginning October the 1st, 2020, travelers who present a driver's license that is not the Real ID compliant will not be permitted to fly. They're going to have to bring another form of an acceptable ID to the airport, or they're going to be turned away, no fly. Now, the list of acceptable IDs includes a passport or a military ID, a border ID card, a trusted traveler card such as Global Entry, a permanent resident card, and some other documents. Now, there's some good news and bad news here. The good news is this. If your license is not yet Real ID compliant, you've got about 18 months to get that updated license. That's the good news. The bad news? Oh, my, here's the bad news. You will need to visit a DMV office to do it, and you may need to plan ahead because getting a Real ID, it requires additional paperwork, which you may be able to find on your DMV website. So when you go to the DMV, let me first suggest you go to Charlie Crimebuster, charliecrimebuster.com. And why not upload a bunch of our shows to listen to with your device as you wait and wait and wait. Well, just think how much safer you'll be. Hey, speaking of our podcasts, there are ways you can help us. One is to go to our website, sign up as a subscriber. There are instructions on how to do that. Take a moment, like us on Facebook. Please follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. This will help us tremendously. And do me a favor, pass the podcast to others. Become a part of the crime-busting family, Charlie Crimebuster family. We'd love to have you as a part of our crime-busting family. Here's another one, and this one is kind of our feature story today. And I want you to do something. I want you to try to put yourself in the shooter's shoes for this one. Because there is something that the media was not telling you at the beginning of the news cycles about this very, very tragic event that went on for several days before this part of the story was corrected. You see, it was said that Officer Aaron Dean and his partner were simply going to a house there in Fort Worth, Texas, and they were checking on the welfare of a person. And usually that's kind of considered a medical thing, and you come up and you knock on the door and you say sheriff's office or you say police office. You pull your vehicle right up in front of the house so people know that you're the police, and that's the way you do that. And that's the way it had been reported, that this was just a welfare check. But now it's a little different. You see, authorities are now looking into what information was actually received by the former Fort Worth police officer Aaron Dean and his partner, which ultimately led to the killing of 28-year-old Miss Jefferson. You see, when Jefferson's neighbor dialed a non-emergency number to request a wellness check, he never expected the responding officers would fatally shoot the young woman. However, according to officials, wires were crossed between the dispatch and law enforcement. You see, the information came from the neighbor to the call takers, and while it was relayed to dispatch, it was determined to be what is called an open structure call. That's what the interim police chief, said to reporters. You see, most people who heard the story, and even I myself when I first read about this story, I thought it was a welfare check, but that was not what the responding officers were told. And CNN reported that there's a vast difference between the way you respond to a welfare check, which typically involves a medical emergency, and an open structure or an open door call, which more directly implies a burglary. See, if you're going to a burglary and you're expecting somebody who's there doing something bad, you're at a higher sensitivity to what's going on with that house. That's what Michael Britt London, who's president of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, that's what he told CNN. You have to be ready for anything. You're taking more of your environment in consideration to be ready for a surprise if there's one. Now, body camera footage showed an officer observing the area surrounding the home where Jefferson and her 8-year-old nephew were. Upon noticing movement in the window, Dean yelled, "Put your hands up! Show me your hands!" before firing one shot through the window, killing Jefferson. Now put yourself in this situation. Here you are, an open structure. You're checking the windows for breakage. You see someone staring back at you with a gun. You tell them to put it up or put it down, and they do not. 4 seconds, they're pointing that gun at you. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Plenty of time for them to shoot you. You wait those 4 seconds, and you shoot. Now let me ask you, what would you do? If you felt your life was in danger, think carefully. Think carefully about this one, friend. Think carefully. Now, Jefferson's father, he called this shooting senseless. And I certainly cannot make sense of why she had to lose her life. The police chief, he said on behalf of Fort Worth Police Department, "I am so sorry for what occurred." And retired Fort Worth police chief and a police consultant, a guy by the name of Jeff Houston, he also said, quote, "There was no clear evidence that a crime was taking place." This lady had a gun. She also had a concealed carry permit, and she had the right to have a gun. There was no proof that a crime had taken place. She hears something in her backyard. She gets up a gun. She takes a gun to the window. She looks to see what's going on. Now, we don't know whether she pointed that gun at the officer or not. They haven't released that information, so we have no idea. They just said the officer perceived a threat. But anyhow, she has the right to defend her castle. She doesn't know that the police is there. She has a gun. And the police officer sees someone with a gun. May or may not have been pointed at him. He gives him a verbal command to put down the weapon. 4 seconds later, he shoots. What did you do, by the way? What did you do? This is a tragedy in so many ways. This officer was there to protect and serve, and he shot an innocent person. Now, that officer has been charged and is out on a $200,000 bond. He's not speaking about the incident because his attorneys told him not to. But there are some lessons that you and I can have today. Whether you said shoot or don't shoot, there are some good lessons, and please take these lessons with you on today's podcast. Number one, if you are a concealed carry citizen, if possible, let the police do their job. Call the cops. They're better trained, better equipped, and better armed to handle situations. And with all that to be said, they too can make terrible mistakes and face the consequences. However, they do have the edge. So at all possible, let them handle your situations. And number two, learn this and write this down. Assess and reassess. You see, what appears one way at the beginning may not be what is the right way. More departments across this country are teaching better de-escalation techniques, and they are training their officers, and I get this, to assess, but also to reassess. Because moment by moment in a fluid situation, moment by moment, that situation can change, and that appears may not be what is in reality. So always assess and reassess. And number three, never stop learning. Oh, it's a valuable lesson. Things are not always as they appear. Learn from every opportunity. And that's what Charlie Crimebuster is all about. Our podcast is exactly that. An opportunity for you to learn how to keep you and your loved ones safe. Even our crazy crook stories can teach you something if you allow them to do so. Well, how did you do in the digital shooting assimilator? I hope you never have to make that decision. Try your best not to get in any situation in which that happens. Avoid conflict at all means, and do your best to live safe and keep others safe around you. Stay alert, stay safe, because the life you save, it just may be your very own.